The anime begins by showing the Gods' Council conducting an assembly to determine the fate of all mankind on this earth. The gods usually do an assembly once every 1,000 years. After 7 million years of human history, the gods decided that humans are irredeemable and must vanish. This time, the assembly was led by the supreme Greek god Zeus, the chairman of the Gods' Council. In the meeting, the gods discussed the behavior of mankind in the last 1,000 years, whether they did a lot of good or the other way around. As humanity grew more arrogant and greedy over time, God's Council reached the final decision to exterminate humanity. Shiva, the four-armed Hindu god of destruction, and Aphrodite, the Greek goddess of love, strongly agreed with the decision because they saw for themselves how humankind has wreaked havoc on this earth. The other gods thought the same. However, when Zeus was about to confirm the final, absolute decision, he was suddenly stopped by a woman named Brunhilde. Brunhilde is a valkyrie, one of a host of female figures who guide the souls of 2 deceased Nordic soldiers on one of the paths in Norse mythology. She apparently disagrees with the gods' decision to just annihilate humanity and proposes to give humanity one last chance to prove its worth. She challenges the gods to hold a tournament called Ragnarok, where the gods will send the most powerful gods totaling 13 people, who will fight life and death against 13 notable humans from across history. Whichever group wins 7 times first will be declared the winner. Airing the challenge, the gods said that fighting humans were useless because humans are weak creatures. Brunhilde even replied to the words of the gods by stating that the gods actually fear humans, so they are reluctant to fight with humans. Brunhilde deliberately offended the gods' pride to make them feel indignant and finally accepted the challenge to fight against the human race. Humanity will be spared if their side achieves 7 victories in the competition. The next day, the Ragnarok tournament finally started, where Heimdall will oversee and comment on the fights of Ragnarok. The Ragnarok tournament begins with the Battle of Thor, the Norse god of thunder, who will fight Lu, a military general and warlord who lived during the late Eastern Han dynasty of Imperial China. To even the odds, each human representative is granted the assistance of a Valkyrie who transforms into a powerful weapon tailored for the user's combat style. However, Lu could not match Thor without this power because he had a very tough physique. Knowing that Lu can fend off his attacks, Thor prepares to perform his flagship technique, and we will be transported to the past that shows the atmosphere of Asgard, one of 9 realms in Norse mythology which is the abode of Thor and the Norse gods. At that time, Asgard was preparing to face attacks from giants who were able to penetrate their defensive walls and destroy Asgard. Many residents of Asgard are victims of the ferocity of the giants. When the giants took control of the city and were about to attack the palace, Thor bravely walked out of the palace to face the giants. With just a single attack from his weapon, the hammer Mjolnir, Thor can subdue all of these giants and restore peace and security to Asgard. Back to the present time, Thor then uses his hammer, Mjolnir, to launch an attack on Lu, where the attack causes a very powerful explosion in the battle arena. Seeing this, Gal, Brunhilde's younger sister and a Valkyrie in training, looked worried and pessimistic, thinking that Lu had been defeated by Thor. Unexpectedly, Lu was able to survive the attack. In fact, he quickly counterattacked Thor with his halberd and managed to injure the god. This incident suddenly shocked everyone who witnessed the battle and wondered how could a weak human like him could injure one of the most powerful gods. The scene then switches to the past and shows Lu, who has always been thirsty for power since he was young. He wanders to various places to find stronger people than him, but they can always be defeated by him. During his lifetime, Lu became a famous figure in all corners of China, even worldwide, because no one could beat him. In the end, he decided to end his life because he thought that no one in this world could conquer him. Back to the present time, the battle between Thor and Lu is still fierce because Lu really enjoyed the fight. After all, this was the first time he had encountered a formidable opponent, so he was determined to put all his strength into defeating Thor. On the other hand, Zeus looked surprised and wondered why the weapon used by Lu could injure Thor. It turns out to be part of Brunhilde's plan so that humanity can match the gods and win the Ragnarok tournament. Before the first battle begins, Brunhilde meets her 4th sister of the Valkyrie named Rangris, who tells her about Thor's weapons, namely the hammer Mjolnir and the iron gloves Jarngraper. She then asks Rangris to dedicate her life to the salvation of mankind by transforming her body into the Sky Piercer, a halberd used by Lu in the fight against Thor. Because of that, Lu was able to injure Thor with his halberd. Turning to the battle arena, Lu balanced Thor's power and fended off the god's attack. He then attacked Thor with his halberd, and unexpectedly, the attack managed to destroy Thor's Jarngraper iron gloves, which stunned everyone to see it. The audience from the humanity side seemed to cheer with joy because their human representatives managed to match the power of the god they had worshipped, even destroying the god's weapon. On the other hand, Hermes, the herald of the Greek gods, told Zeus that the Valkyries could turn their bodies into weapons, powerful enough to injure, even kill gods. That power was called Valkyrie. Hearing this, Zeus didn't feel angry but instead seemed happy because the battle would become more interesting if humanity could match the gods. Meanwhile, Thor seems overwhelmed by Lu Bu's attack after his iron gloves are destroyed, or so it seemed to the mortal's gaze. Zeus then explained that Thor's iron gloves were not used to withstand the power of the hammer Mjolnir, but to fight Thor's too powerful strength. In God's view, the hammer and the iron gloves are not weapons but tools that have been designed so that Thor can use his great power with more direction and precision so that the damage he inflicts will be even greater. With just one swing of his hammer, he could overthrow the leader of the ice giants, Jotun, and crush the giant's head. During his life as a god, Thor's hammer attack never missed, but in the Ragnarok tournament, Lu Bu could dodge Mjolnir's hammer attacks several times. On the other hand, Brunhilde looked very surprised to find out which of the gods would be participating in the Ragnarok tournament. Meanwhile, Zeus seemed even more excited when he saw the list of the humans who would do the next battle. In the battle arena, Thor and Lu Bu both exerted all their strength to determine the victory of their battle, until in the end, Thor overthrew Lu Bu and won the first fight in the Ragnarok tournament. The gods cheered for his victory, while the human side seemed to grieve that the god had defeated Lu Bu. Lu Bu's followers, who witnessed their master's battle, were displeased that he was defeated. They then attacked Thor despite knowing that the god could easily defeat them with just one swing of his hammer, Mjolnir. Meanwhile, Gaul and Brunhilde seemed devastated by the first defeat on humanity's side. She then tells Gaul that whoever loses in the Ragnarok tournament, his soul will be shattered into pieces and unable to be reincarnated again. Brunhilde then chooses the next human fighter, Adam, the progenitor of all humanity. In the battle arena, Heimdall informs all the spectators that there has been a slight change in the god's stronghold. Hermes suddenly appeared in the middle of the arena while playing a song with his violin and announced that the god representative for the second match was Zeus. Hearing this, everyone present was shocked, including Brunhilde, who didn't expect him to participate in the Ragnarok tournament. Towards the start of the second battle, Zeus apparently persuaded Shiva to let himself fight first to replace him. At first, Shiva refused because he had prepared himself for the fight, but because of his insistence, he finally conceded to Zeus and allowed the supreme god to fight against Adam. Arriving at the battle arena, Zeus immediately showed his true form in front of Adam and the entire audience, where he turned out to have a large and strong body, just like Thor. Compared to Zeus, Adam looks normal because he is just a human. Not long after came a Valkyrie named Reginleif who performed a Volander with Adam, turning into brass knuckles. Because of that, he focused more on close combat, where Zeus would fight him with his bare hands. Zeus started a bombardment attack on Adam, and unexpectedly, he could dodge all of these attacks, even though Zeus launched the attack in just seconds. Ordinary humans certainly couldn't avoid the attack, but not so with Adam, who was able to dodge many times from the attack. Even with some of the mainstay techniques at his disposal, Zeus could not bring Adam down, because he always managed to dodge his attacks. When Zeus was caught off guard due to confusion in the battle, Adam did not waste the opportunity to counterattack with the same technique he possessed and managed to injure the god. Seeing this, Hermes and the gods looked very surprised by Adam's abilities because he can perfectly replicate any move and technique he lays his eyes upon, including all the previously used by Zeus. The audience from the human race seemed to cheer with joy because Adam had succeeded in injuring the supreme god. He turns out to have a unique power called the Divine Reflection where he can imitate any movement his eyes see. In addition, Adam has very good reflexes so that he can dodge attacks that have been launched by Zeus even though Zeus attacks him blindly and with a speed that far exceeds ordinary human abilities. After that, Adam counterattacked with a technique he imitated from Zeus, and the attack turned out to hit and was able to make the god bounce far out of the battle arena and hit a wall. On the other hand, Hermes thought that Zeus was actually facing a reflection of himself, namely Adam, who was indeed predicted to embody a god. On the other hand, Hermes thought that Zeus was actually facing a reflection of himself, namely Adam, who was indeed predicted to embody a god. Not accepting being dropped just like that, Zeus changed his body to bigger and more muscular. Even now, his body size is much larger than Adam's. However, he seemed normal to face Zeus. Zeus then took out one of his flagship techniques, where Hermes and Ares looked so surprised that he would use that deadly technique to defeat an ordinary human like Adam. In the past, when Zeus and the gods of Olympus fought against the Titans, he used the deadly technique to overthrow his father, Cronus. Therefore, Ares and Hermes never thought that he would use that deadly technique on a human. Not only deadly, but the attack was very fast. Even so fast, it was as if time had stopped spinning. However, Zeus' deadly technique did not hit Adam at all. Instead, he was hit by Adam's blow, which overthrew him. The audience was stunned when they saw Adam, who succeeded in overthrowing the supreme god. Ares, who saw that, thought that no matter how hard he practiced to increase his strength, he might never be able to beat Adam because he had a very great imitation ability. On the other hand, Brunhilde explains to Gaul that Adam has such great abilities because he greatly hates gods. In the past, Adam used to live comfortably and peacefully in the Garden of Eden, where all his needs were met. One day, there was a shocking incident where Eve, the first woman in this world, was accused of having eaten an apple from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. It was strictly forbidden to be eaten by anyone living in the Garden of Eden. However, this is not what actually happened. At that time, Eve was alone and approached by a serpent who wanted to overpower her. Because she was trying so hard to free herself from the serpent, she pushed the serpent hard into the tree and rushed to escape from there. This turned out to cause one of the fruits on the tree to fall, so the serpent devised a cunning plan by eating the fruit and accusing Eve of having done it, so she's banished from the Garden of Eden. She tried to defend herself, but the gods believed the serpent's words even more. Then, Adam appeared with a basket of fruit from the tree, and ate the fruit in front of everyone, then vomited it. He said that if Eve was banished from the Garden of Eden, he would have to be expelled because he had eaten the fruit. Adam then revealed that it was the serpent who had eaten the fruit and eventually killed the serpent. Since that time, he hated the gods because they believed more in the serpent's words and banished them from the Garden of Eden. Back to the fight, Eve was watching the fight in the audience with her children, where everyone seemed stunned to see them because they were so beautiful and charming. When Heimdall was about to announce Adam as the winner in the second battle, Zeus suddenly rose again and asked him why he wanted to fight against the gods. Adam firmly replied that he was doing all of this for the sake of his children and all humanity, and it made all the humans who witnessed the Ragnarok tournament very moved. They supported and prayed for Adam so that he could win the battle against Zeus. After that, Zeus suppressed all the muscle mass in his body, at which point the god then turned emaciated again. However, it becomes a problem for Adam because Zeus plans to release his real power. On the other hand, Loki, who was watching the fight, seemed very excited because it had been a long time since he had last seen Zeus use his real power so powerful. However, Loki does not deny that Adam is definitely not an ordinary human because he was able to overthrow one of the most powerful gods and one of the gods most respected by other gods. Long story short, Zeus again launched a barrage of attacks. Although Adam quickly reversed the attack, he apparently planned to exhaust Adam from overusing his eye abilities, and it made his eyes gradually begin to turn red and bleed. Seeing this, Brunhilde began to realize that it was Adam's weakness, and she looked very panicked because he would lose if he kept pushing himself. Because he was too forced to use his strength, Adam's eyes bled more and more until finally, he was blind, and he had to withstand a barrage of attacks from Zeus because now he could no longer use his power. Adam, who did not want to be defeated by the gods, was determined to use all his strength to fight Zeus and could make the god fall down. The spectators from the human side thought that Adam had won the battle, but apparently, he had lost all his strength and was defeated by Zeus. The gods again won the battle in the Ragnarok tournament and managed to outperform the humanity side for a while. At the end of the fight, Zeus praised Adam as the strongest man in the world he had ever faced. Even at the end of his life, he put all his strength against the gods. On the other hand, Brunhilde seemed very depressed by Adam's defeat and humanity's position in the Ragnarok tournament, which was completely unfavorable. Not long after, a valkyrie named Rhys came to see Gaul and Brunhilde to calm them down. But Brunhilde seemed to be very frustrated and not heeding her presence. When Brunhilde was about to appoint the next fighter from the human side, suddenly an old man appeared who was a famous Japanese swordsman. She was shocked and was very surprised to find out that the man was Kojiro Sasaki. The next day, when Heimdall was about to announce the fighters in the third round, the entire battle arena was flooded by seawater, where a god entered the arena in a very cool and dramatic way. The fighter from the stronghold of the gods who will compete in the third round is none other than Poseidon, the Greek god of the sea. Meanwhile, the fighter of the human race is Kojiro Sasaki. When he entered the battle arena, a boy in the audience seemed to question his presence because that boy thought Kojiro was not the greatest swordsman in the world and thought his father deserved to be there. Apart from the boy, the other warriors seemed to underestimate Kojiro, especially now that he looks very old. However, the boy's father, Musashi Miyamoto, the great Japanese swordsman, told them that Kojiro was already at the highest level and greater than himself, so he deserved to be there and fight against a god. In the battle arena, Kojiro, who is very experienced in battle, chooses to be calm and not rash when dealing with the sea god, who is one of the gods most respected by the gods. The scene then switches and shows the past when Poseidon flatly refused the invitation of his older brother, Adamas, to form an alliance. Adamas, who felt slighted by him, then attacked the god. However, he can easily kill Adamas. Poseidon turned out to have a characteristic where the god never looked at his interlocutor. If he looked at his interlocutor, it was certain that that person would die at his hands. After that, we will be shown the past of Kojiro, who was still a student at a sword martial arts college called Dojo Toda. Kojiro was called the loser because he gives up easily in every training he goes through. Although Kojiro is often scolded by his master for giving up easily, he doesn't seem to care much about his master's words. Realizing that he was tired of practicing at the Toda Dojo, he decided to go on a trip, seeking experience and knowledge in various places. During his adventures, Kojiro continues to train his skills in the sword martial arts so that he manages to defeat tough opponents and is known as a fairly great swordsman. After that, he returns to the Toda Dojo, where he can make his master surrender, even before they fight, because of realizing his abilities. Even Kojiro's abilities have been acknowledged by the Great Master, even though the old man can't see and can only feel the immense energy within him. After a while, Kojiro decides to travel all over Japan to find the greatest swordsmen and fight against them. However, he always gave up in desperate situations and was called the Great Loser. Going back to the battle arena, Kojiro decided to attack Poseidon first, but the god successfully repelled the attack. Even so, he managed to slash some of Poseidon's hair, making the human camp audience cheer for him for this impressive act. After that, Poseidon began to launch a barrage of attacks at Kojiro with his trident, but he could dodge the god's swift attack. On the other hand, Brunhilde explained to Gaul that during his lifetime, Kojiro had gone through many battles against great warriors, so he could predict his opponent's movements. That's why, when Poseidon entered the battle arena, Kojiro had observed the steps and predicted all of Poseidon's movements to anticipate the attack from the sea god. Ares, who is aware of Kojiro's abilities, looks very amazed because there is a human who can predict a god's movements. Poseidon charged forward in one swift and unexpected attack and managed to injure Kojiro with his trident. Seeing this, all the spectators from the god's camp then cheered for him, even calling the god a special nickname. But Poseidon didn't seem to like that, and just by glaring at them, the onlookers fell silent in fear of the god's wrath. He then tells Kojiro that the gods don't need anyone, friends, or even relatives because gods are perfect beings from the moment they are born. After that, Poseidon again launched an attack on Kojiro, but this time with more power. So fast, his trident strike seemed to be raining down on Kojiro from all sides. Although Kojiro could parry the attack, his prediction was slightly off, so he was almost stabbed by Poseidon's trident. However, he immediately bounced back and used one of his signature sword techniques to defeat Poseidon. Even so, his attack meant nothing to the god, who could easily break his sword in half. Seeing Kojiro's sword split in two, the audience from the human side looked very worried that he couldn't win the battle. On the other hand, Kojiro remembers the past, precisely when he fought against the greatest swordsman, Musashi Miyamoto. At that time, they fought to the last drop of blood for the title of the greatest swordsman of all time. During that grueling battle, both of them enjoyed the duel of life and death because they had found a worthy opponent, which they had longed for. However, in the end, Kojiro had to die at the hands of Musashi Miyamoto. Back to the present time, Kojiro then walked and picked up his sword pieces while asking Poseidon about the meaning of a fight for the god. But he said nothing. While picking up the sword, Kojiro clearly remembers that his sword holds many memories and experiences he has gone through in his life, where he met many great warriors and learned a lot from them. He realized that his sword was humanity's last hope to survive and not be destroyed by the gods. Not long after, Kojiro's two broken swords suddenly turned into two whole swords, which was the power of a valkyrie, who was none other than Rhys. At the edge of the battle arena, Gaul asked Brunhilde why Kojiro could get two full swords like that. She explained that it was the strength of Rhys, whose special ability allowed her to transform into two weapons after Kojiro's sword was shattered. Due to Rhys's bipolar personality, the sword can reform itself into two shorter blades. After getting a new weapon, Kojiro immediately attacks Poseidon, engaging in a fierce battle. In fact, Musashi's son, who had underestimated him, was surprised because he had such great abilities. Musashi explained to his son that all of it was Kojiro's struggle and hard work that he had done throughout his life that made him could read the attacks of his opponents and imitate the movements of the great warriors who had fought against him. As a result of Kojiro's repeated attacks, Poseidon was seriously injured, which made Ares and all the spectators from the god's camp look very surprised because he managed to injure the famous god who was never touched. On the other hand, Poseidon seems to be enjoying the fight because this is the first time he has faced an opponent that is proportional to him. He then issued several of his mainstay techniques to deal with Kojiro, which made him overwhelmed by Poseidon's attacks. However, Kojiro tried his best to defend against Poseidon's attack and fight back. He had wanted to give up, but he again remembered his past with his masters, his friends, and those closest to him. Kojiro was revived when he realized that the fate of mankind was at stake, and he was the only hope to save mankind. On the other hand, all the spectators from the human side simultaneously encouraged Kojiro to get him back up and defeat Poseidon, until in the end, he managed to cut off both Poseidon's arms and slaughtered the god. After Poseidon was confirmed to have fallen, Kojiro was declared the winner in the third round of the Ragnarok tournament, which was good progress for the salvation of mankind on this earth. However, the gods still seem so shocked by Poseidon's defeat that they are still wondering how an ordinary human can defeat one of the most powerful gods most respected by other gods. After the fight, Kojiro collapsed due to losing a lot of strength, but Reese changed back to her original form and saved him. Meanwhile, Zeus and the other gods discussed Poseidon's defeat and decided to be more serious and take their opponents seriously in the next battle. At the end of the anime, Brunhilde is seen having a secret meeting with Hermes, where they engage in a serious conversation. The moral that can be learned from this anime is, although the annihilation of mankind is indeed considered too cruel, we can't deny that humans have caused damage on this earth. So, if these arrogant and greedy humans do not realize their mistakes, the gods can punish them.